All right, we're recording. Vivian, if you could tell us who you are and what you do.
Yeah, my name's Vivian Kim, and I dance. I make dance, and I teach dance. I eat, sleep, and breathe dance, basically. Uh,
Nice.
yeah, I do a couple of things. I teach at a few different institutions. I freelance and choreograph and teach master classes for people in state and out of state. And yeah, I just wear a lot of different hats right now, which is okay.
And like, can you tell folks kind of like, does your dance focus in any kind of way? Is it multidisciplinary? Do you have any kind of personal ways that you want your dance to reflect in the world?
Hmm. Yeah, so I would say that I'm pretty straightforward. Um, I wouldn't consider myself to be an interdisciplinary artist. I like to use text and video and projection, but I wouldn't say that it's that I integrate it enough into my performances
Mm-hmm.
to call myself interdisciplinary. But a lot of my research focuses on East Asian values.
Okay.
So, like specifically taking a look and focusing on the Confucius Analects for women and how they, like these age old philosophies, continue to thrive still
Mm-hmm.
in East American cultures, and how it affects me as a Korean American woman in the 21st century, being brought up in two very different, like juxtaposing worlds, like traditional Korean and then US American, which is like so all about being you and being true to yourself and like finding you. So
Yeah.
yeah, a lot of my work circulates around that and then kind of goes out from there.
Thank you for that insight. I just had an aha moment about what being an American is, or like from your viewpoint, because I think I've gotten in this slog of like, um, especially being a person of color, a queer person of color for myself, like there's this story of individualism and meritocracy that in some degrees I bought, but I really like your interpretation of what it means to be honed by this culture here too. Is just like actually finding your truth and living it.
Yeah.
You just totally flipped that dialogue in my head.
I love it. That's great. Yeah. I mean, obviously there are things in the US, you know, socially and familially and stuff like that, but I feel like I don't know so much now with like the political climate, but I feel like US American culture is the most open. You know, like there's a lot of room and autonomy for people to be able to like really figure out who they are and what they like and what they don't like. And I don't necessarily feel that other culture standards offer that kind of self discovery.
Yeah, thank you very much for that insight. I mean, like I know like especially lately I've been feeling really negative because like the things that are in the news are telling us something different, but that's really true. Like there are places that even as like a female presenting person, I can't go. Like I have tattoos. I laugh too loud. I like, you know, there's like numerous things that are like have heavy strictures on them that don't here. I've been able to have a lot of flexibility in my life and try different things out and not be beholden to much necessarily. Yeah, so thank you very much for flipping that switch in my head.
Yeah, of
Um,
course. Happy to.
So like, can you tell like you're talking about um the values from two different cultures and like how do they conjunct and how do they collide?
Yeah, collide is a great word. Um, uh, Trying to find, like, I'm still trying to find a balance between my super traditional Korean side and then like being born in the US and still identifying as an American. And I'm not sure that I've found a balance yet.
Okay.
And that's still very much a work in progress, and I feel like it always will be.
Yeah.
But it just, like, so much of East Asia still views women through this very narrow lens, right?
Hmm.
And like whether those ideas were established before Confucius, during Confucius, or after Confucius, I can't really say, but I definitely think he had influence on them, because I mean, to this day, it's like women shouldn't lay down in the room when a man walks in. Like, you can't get comfortable. You have to sit with your legs crossed. You need to get married in order to, like, I don't know. You have to be married and be attached to a man.
Hmm.
And the idea of like having to preserve your own body because it actually belongs to your parents, and that
Yeah.
sense of society, like, that's, I fight with that a lot. But you know, like, again, I'm trying to find a balance between the two, just so that I'm not like completely uprooting something that I've been growing up with for
Right.
years of my life, and also to like not give my parents a heart attack. You know. But yeah, there's definitely more colliding than coalescing right now.
Yeah. Thank you for that. I think I I really love, yeah, it's really easy to be like, to throw up fist unicorns to the things that like challenge us in probably, unfair ways a lot of times, like old strictures and old mores and things like that.
Yeah.
Um and I like that you're choosing a different path, like trying to find some, I don't know if reconciliation is the right word,
Mm-hmm.
but that's the word that comes to mind, like some kind of like degree of acceptance, but also like being true to yourself in that too. And I like too that you mention the body, because that is something that I feel when I watch your work, is that there is I mean, obviously it's dance, so like there's, the body is wholly involved. um so like just like this focus on the body, like what a body is, in different cultures. I mean, even here,
Yeah.
and even in the US culture, it's just like often the body is not your own in certain respects. And I feel tricky saying that. That's not how I want to say that, but like that that happens. And so like I'm trying to find that correlation, because it was something I felt when I watched your work, but I don't totally know how to articulate it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I feel like I understand what you're saying. I mean, it's tricky talking about the body, you know,
Yeah,
like, just in a sense of being a human, and then you add on all of these external standards, stereotypes, whatever, and then it just becomes more vastly complicated than it actually needs to be.
right.
um, but I mean, I feel like reconcile maybe is the right word, or the word that I am seeking to to describe that, because I've spent so long, you know, like, being ashamed to be Korean
Mm-hmm.
in my Korean body from like the US American side of my life.
Mm-hmm.
And then being ashamed of, or not being ashamed, but being taught to be quieter with my body as a woman from both cultures, you know,
Right.
because yeah, the value of the female body, you know, like that's a completely different topic as well. So yeah, I think just like dance is a really good outlet in trying to reconcile with the two, because I
I
don't necessarily know that I'd be able to do that with words.
Yeah, I think about that a lot. There's so when I was in my MFA, I'm a writer and I work with words, and so often it's my job to try to express very difficult things. And what I was finding was there were no words for a lot of my experiences. There just weren't words. I didn't know what they were. I didn't know how to talk about it. I didn't know if other people were talking about it. And I came across a writer named Edouard Glissant, I think a Caribbean writer, and he talks a lot about like diasporic communities and stuff, and about how, like, in the cases where our speech has been taken away, how do we express? And dance comes up. Absolutely, dance comes up as a way of expressing these like very like deep things that need to be expressed. Otherwise, they're just bottled up and they can destroy a person, you know. And I mean, that's, you know, you see a lot of dancers, their movements are very strict or very, you know, there's a canon of movement, I feel like.
Yeah.
And there's something that you're doing that's different. Like, of course, there's like, I mean, I think of the artist Pete, or the dancer Pina, is that her name? Yeah, and like I feel like she uses that canon of movement and also like somehow figures out how to instill like so much emotion that you're literally crushed just by watching a performance. And I feel like your work and the dancers that you hang around are like doing something like that, and also pushing against the boundary of that canon of movement. And you can tell me if I'm wrong, but that's just something that I feel.
Thank you. It means a lot. Compared to Pina Bao, she's a legend. So that thank you, Tamika. You made my whole year. This is a highlight for sure. Yeah, no, I don't know. I can't really speak for my dance friends, and how they feel in their body when they dance. But I feel like as a person of color,
yeah,
like there's just so many, and I feel like we're often stifled with our words. You know, like any person in the BIPOC community, I feel like raising our voice and speaking out against things that we very like viscerally feel is wrong, or like things that upset us, we're really quieted. We're taught to be quiet most of the time. And so for me, like dance becomes that nonverbal outlet. And I just, yeah, I don't know, like just something about it feels very spiritual in a way that it like, I don't know how to describe it. It feels like a cleansing, and also in like an unearthing of things and unbottling. I mean, I think Keith could agree to that.
Yeah.
And like I could name a couple of other, maybe like 5 or so other of some of my other dance friends that would agree to that statement of like, that's like the one time where we can actually just be vocal without being vocal, you know?
Yeah, and that's something that's interesting too, because so something people don't really, because my minor was in linguistics, and something I learned along the way, and I think I'm getting this right, or sort of right, at least sort of right, is like language is a technology, right? And like depending on who is kind of holding the strings of that technology, it can be directed. And like ideally language is play, like we get to experiment and like push against it and find new ways of speaking. But I feel like language is, I always say language is kind of our best try at expression. I don't really feel like it does what we think it does, or what we would like it to do, you know. And so like it's very interesting to think about movement as a way of expressing, and like there being more flexibility there, because like, you know, like I just mentioned, like there were experiences that I literally didn't have the words for. And like the thing is I feel these things very deeply in my body. And I can move my body, and like I have a certain, I guess I'll call it a canon of movement. And a trained dancer has like so many more, you know, so much more skill and experience in you know, expanding on that canon of movement. And so like, I don't know, I'm trying to form it into a question or something. And I'm also trying to wrap my head around it a little bit. It's just like, I feel like it's a very valid mode of expression that is underutilized. And
I agree. I mean, I think, especially in this day and age, you know, like we're so far removed from our bodies that movement is hard. You know, like walking, bending over to tie your shoes, you know, doing everyday things like that. That's whatever. Like that's ingrained. That's memory. But I think the use of the body in more complex ways, like that's just such a completely lost art, and it's so undervalued.
yeah,
Because like as a dancer, your brain fires both sides, left and right, simultaneously, which is like really hard to do on an everyday basis as a person that might just do like whatever you would consider to be an 8 to 5 or a 9 to 5 or whatever that is. And I see, and I truly believe to my core that if people would just like find a way to get in tune with their body, that they would be so much happier.
Yeah.
Like more so at peace. Because like you said, they're just experiences that words are not enough.
Right.
And even if they are, tone and the way you say things, like all of that stuff gets misconstrued. It's so pure and so straightforward. Like there is no second guessing unless it's like a dance about, I don't know, a person like walking on stage and eating a bag of Skittles for 12 minutes and then walking off, and then you're like, what the fuck did I just watch? You're like, I have no idea what that was. But I think for the most part, like even just moving, not even being a trained dancer or like a technician or whatever, just like understanding the body that you're animating is so important, and people don't do that anymore. And I feel like that's why there's such a blockage in a lot of people with communication and you know, movement and things like that.
Yeah. I mean, what if we could, like, you know, like in the 80s, like when we're pissed at people, we just have a dance off, you know, like just like dance fight. I think that would solve a lot of problems.
I agree. Like even if you can't dance, like everybody should just carry around pieces of cardboard with them, so they can like throw it down and be like, okay, we're gonna duke it out right now on this piece of cardboard on the sidewalk.
Yeah, no one gets hurt unless they throw their arm out. You know, it's fine.
We call the paramedics and have them on site. I don't know. We'll figure it out.
Yeah. Problem resolution.
Yes.
That's what we need. It's like dance fight. What are some of the biggest things that you've learned from dancing?
Oh man. I don't know. I attribute a lot to dance, but I would say learning like time management and multitasking for sure. Like on a basic level, you know, learning how to organize and be a leader and a person who works well within a community and things like that too. But I think on a completely different yet still related, in still a related way, like just learning how to function and be a good person.
Yeah.
Because like a lot of people don't know this, but like dancers spend, when we go on to continue our education in colleges or universities, we spend so much of our time theorizing and learning about politics and social standpoints and things like, you know, that we need in order to thrive and create work, but also in turn helps us function as better people in society. Because most dancers I know are, you know, deeply caring, very intelligent, well thought out, opinionated people. And I really, really, truly believe that that's because of what we do.
That's amazing. And yeah, I didn't know that. I think I grew up thinking like, you know, there's the world of the body and there's the world of the mind. And for some reason, often there's that story that there's a differentiation. But even like folks I know who bodybuild and rock climb and like do all of these very physical things, they're interested in a lot more than just the action. They're interested in how their muscles work. They're interested in how those lessons from all these different sports and whatnot can be applied in real life and, you know, interactions with people or work or whatever. And often they also are knowledgeable in all kinds of other scopes too. You know, it's not just the body or the mind, but both. And I don't know if that's because that's how I'm wired and that's who I surround myself with, maybe, but like, I don't know, that's just something I've noticed. And it creates, you know, obviously a whole person. It's just like, there's, I think in Tai Chi and in my short experience with Tai Chi and Qigong and even Aikido, there's like, you know, this idea of the 5 excellences where you're not just learning the movements or how to fight or, you know, those kinds of things. You're not just doing that. You're also learning not just about the breath and the things that happen in the body, but cognitively, like strategy games and art and other things like probably music and a whole bunch of other things that you learn. And those 5 excellences help to round out the brain, really, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would agree with that. I feel like there's just, yeah. Movement definitely offers a different lens. That mind-body connection. I mean, just even people that like taking it down to like a more basic level of just people who just work out without, you know, being associated with yoga or Pilates or bodybuilding, like that mind-body connection, like that offers so much if you can tap into it.
Yeah, like I feel like not enough people get there, but maybe eventually they get there. It's just one day all the things are lined up and what was that?
I said I hope so. We can
soon.
that. Yeah, I mean, shoot, that means everybody would be enlightened to some degree, right? I'm not sure people are ready for that yet.
I mean, I think people are and they don't know it. So like, I used to have some qualms with certain yoga studios because they focused on the physical practice so much and also removed it from, you know, tradition, like absolutely removed it from tradition. And so now it becomes a hip new workout. And I used to have so much beef with that, like so much. Like I've done a couple yoga teacher trainings and was really interested in kind of like the more spiritual aspects and some of the cleanliness or cleansing practices, which I don't necessarily practice very well myself, and meditation and things like that. But here's what happens. If you go into some of those studios with folks who maybe didn't think about things like volunteerism and community efforts and stuff, maybe they didn't think about them before, but all of a sudden you start seeing these brochures on their bulletin boards for those things. And I was like, huh, okay, so if yoga is a technology, you know, the work is happening, and it might not be in the way that you think it's supposed to go. It's just like you have to trust the process for different people. It's like a different way in. It's like, I want the yoga abs and the yoga ass, and then all of a sudden you're doing community service too, you know. That's cool.
Yeah, I feel like, I don't know, so many things have derived so far away from like the core of, you know, like with commoditizing things and colonizing things and bastardizing what anything is really supposed to be at its truest core, especially in this country, you know, like all of that stuff gets lost in translation somewhere, and it be like you said, becomes that hip new thing that everybody all of a sudden wants to do. And like now yoga studios are just a part of gentrification, you know, go to these places that were like really sketchy, and now it's like, oh, they got a yoga pod, they got a core power yoga and a Starbucks and like all of this stuff. And yeah, I don't know, I think if we could like get away from the superficial aspect of a lot of these things, I would be better off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's like, have you heard of NIA? I can't remember what NIA stands for, but I feel like that's such a good example of what we're talking about, because like American culture, we like to kind of cherry pick. I'll take this thing, this thing, this thing, and make a whole thing and put my name on it and copyright it. And I mean, NIA's cool, it's fun, but it's also very funny. You know, it's mostly the same kinds of people that go, and it's a mixture of like Tai Chi and martial arts and yoga and whatever else they want to put in there, right? I think Feldenkrais, maybe, depending on the teacher. So it's
even know, Tamika, your guess is as good as mine. Like a couple of NIA classes I've seen, women have been doing like animalistic guttural breath work, and in other classes they're like skipping around having a good time to this like I don't know, like weird mixture of like African tribal music to like techno. So I just, shit if I know what the hell NIA is. Like women look like they're having a great time though.
yeah, we'll have some cocktails after. I think that actually does happen sometimes. I've only ever gone to a couple classes. I used to have a video and stuff. Yeah, it's just very funny in that way. And I think it's just such a great example of that. Like, you know, you can like cherry pick and like be superficial about it, and it does a certain thing. And I actually don't think there are a lot of NIA studios left, if any, especially in Denver. I don't know. And probably for that reason.
Yeah, I mean, I know that there's one woman who's still running NIA classes in Boulder.
Okay.
I haven't seen any advertisement for that in, to be completely honest, like years since I graduated from my undergraduate program in 2014. Like I haven't heard anything about it since then.
Yeah. And I think that's important to note too, because as a dancer, I know as a singer, I've often been tasked with finding out the history of a song, and if it's in a different language, the pronunciation, and also like you know, the deeper meaning of the words, and then applying whatever meaning, like evoking whatever meaning that is for me, and putting that into the song too. And so there's like these multiple levels of understanding. And I imagine there's something similar with dancing.
Yeah, I mean, I think it depends on like, I think it depends on what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like as a choreographer, I'm working with dancers who I'm presuming already have this knowledge, right?
Mm-hmm.
As a dance instructor, I think the historical context is more important to highlight so that they understand where everything is really coming from, especially with street dance.
Yeah.
You know, like so many kids and adults, just people in general, like don't really know that hip hop is a diasporic form. You know, they don't know that the cipher is actually a tradition from Africa, like the circle is a sacred space, like all of these things. So I think as an educator, continuing to learn history and presenting that to my students in a way that it's not just regurgitation is really important. And on the flip side of that, as a choreographer, a person making work, like I and Keith, since we're like doing viscosity to get, like, we're so much in the space of like decolonizing everything that we know. So yeah, I think it really just kind of depends on like where you are and how, like, what type of institution you're teaching and like what level of people you're working with, and you know, all of these other factors. But yeah, I mean, I agree that to some extent that every dancer has that like historical knowledge of what we're doing and why.
Can you give an example of what some of that decolonization might look like, especially as a person of color? Because I think a lot of us POCs, I am painfully aware about the need to decolonize, because I mean, I'm mixed race. I grew up in Boise, Idaho with my white family. And I'm constantly every day like wondering like if I'm more an ally or accomplice, or if I'm actually, you know, whatever label people prefer me to be that day, or whatever label I'm comfortable with that day. And so decolonization is definitely something that I have to do every day. And I don't know. Yeah, can you talk about that a little bit? Like, what's an example?
Yeah, I mean, for me, all of my dance work starts from a personal place,
Mm-hmm.
and then it comes out into the dance world as form, right? As a phrase form. So I think just like checking myself on the daily and real like whatever I'm researching at that time, that's like where I begin my colonization process. So like there was this whole thing of like Korean beauty,
Yeah.
right? Because plastic surgery and skin bleaching products to have more Western European features is like rampant everywhere. I'm just hyper aware of South Korea because that's you know, I'm trying to get more in touch with my culture. So like looking at all of these different beauty standards, and you know, like I had this moment where I was doing all of this research in order to set this dance on 4 white women.
Yeah.
About Korean beauty standards, you know, and like the sexualization of all of these like European features and everything.
Mm-hmm.
Like I get so wound up in that research that I actually start reflecting some of those things back on me. And like my mom has been on this whole spout of like me getting dual eyelid surgery ever since I was little.
Uh-huh.
So like just understanding that that's a white beauty standard.
Mm-hmm.
And like being comfortable with my eyes and the shape of my eyes, and just like this is what it is, you know, and just like understanding those things, I think begins that decolonization process for me. And then like translating it into dance, you know, like I grew up doing modern dance, but I only ever learned about white modern pioneers and forerunners. Like we didn't talk about Catherine Dunham. We didn't talk about Jose Limon or Alvin Ailey. And if we did, it was like a week. But we would spend multiple weeks on Martha Graham,
Mm-hmm.
Duncan, Twyla Tharp, you know, Ruth St. Dennis, all of these people. So I think just understanding that, and like that gets a little bit trickier for me, is like, how do I decolonize movement? But I'm always curious as if to whether like the context of moving is being put to already puts it through that process of decolonization. Sorry, I feel like I'm rambling. Like,
No, I don't feel like you are.
makes sense.
Like, yeah, that this piece about like how do you decolonize movement?
Mm-hmm.
I think that's such a huge question.
Yeah, you know, I don't think that's a question I have an answer for.
I think yeah, in these cases it's good to like put that question up front, even if we don't have an answer. and then maybe we'll get to it. Hopefully somebody will get to it,
Yeah.
because that's like, you know, kind of like language is just like, it is something that can be wielded by other people, or groups of people. And so
Right.
therefore also, you know, therefore also movement. I mean, because we're constantly under someone's gaze, and depending on who is looking, what does that mean? What do our movements mean?
Mm-hmm.
And like, you know, you when you talk about like it being on a very personal level first, I think of, you know, the idealect, like our language is a certain accumulation of experiences,
Mm-hmm.
and then it just like, you know, ripples out from there, like family unit, community, city, etc.
Yeah.
um, and so, I mean, that's something i I haven't often thought about, is like, I mean, we inherit movement also from the people around us, um, and just to think that some of it has been colonized, and now I'm thinking about all the instances where I have modified my movement to not draw attention, for example.
Yeah. Yeah. Especially as a BIPOC person,
Hmm.
you know, like
Hmm.
we already have all of these standards within our own community.
Hmm.
And then you like have to go out into a homogenous world
Right.
and try to figure out how to function there as well, where people have a completely different set of standards for how a person of color should act, behave, speak, whatever. And like you're like we're just go through the washer with colonization, you know, like we're like rinsing and repeating everything.
Yeah.
So it's just like that checking in and making sure like just to be like, was that like because, you know, the white man told
Right.
me how I should be behaving, or is that really like something that's like coming from my body, my soul, my mind, whatever. um yeah, but like yeah, it just gets way trickier when you start adding movement in there.
Yeah. I'm like, this whole time I've been thinking about like one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen is, in the beginning of Beyonce's Homecoming, she does this catwalk. And I honestly haven't moved much past that catwalk because I've watched it so many times, and just, it is so awe-strikingly beautiful and graceful and just obviously well practiced. And if I had seen something like that when I was like 12 years old, I might be a different person.
Right.
And the reason is because I think she definitely decolonized that movement and also owned the power in that sensuality as well. And I think that she had, a little more weight than usual. She might have just had a kid or something, but she was extra curvy and no apologies. And this catwalk was the most amazing thing I've ever seen in my life. I was just like, I just want to watch this all the time, and I want to move my body that way.
Right.
And the only other time I have felt that is when the first time I went to Oakland, the chocolate part of Oakland. I'm not supposed to say chocolate, but you know what I'm saying, like
Yeah.
where the Black folks lived. And I grew up in Boise, Idaho, so like I was really embarrassed about like my curvy features, and like, I never wore skirts or anything because they rode up in the back and stuff like that. But in Oakland, there were people of all different shapes and sizes, and they dressed and they, pressed their curves against the fabric, and they let their hips be free in their movement, just walking down the street. And it was absolutely empowering and absolutely beautiful. And it was just like, it was a place where folks could do that without, other eyes saying that it should or should not be. Um,
Yeah. I grew up in Nebraska, so I feel you. Yeah, it's different. I don't know if I necessarily like have had an experience like that. Like I've been hypersexualized by so many men of different races.
yeah,
Um, and like East Asian women are, you know, like I don't know, exposure is too much. and covering up is the normal because you don't want men to look at you, but that, like, the fact that statement there is problematic,
Right.
you know? So like, yeah, I don't know if I've had an experience where I've been like, yes, I'm comfortable, like this is empowering, yet. I'm sure that it's coming, but
Yeah.
yeah.
Are you kind of creating those spaces, like when you're teaching or even on the stage?
I think, yeah, maybe on the stage. And I don't necessarily, I feel like I'm creating that space for my students
Hmm.
as an educator, as a dance educator, but I don't necessarily know that I'm carving that space for myself when I'm instructing.
Okay.
I don't know. It just like, I am always, as any like female identifying person is, I'm sure, like hyper aware, even when in like the baggiest clothes, you know?
Right.
So yeah, I think, but even performance wise, like I like embracing that masculine energy is way more comfortable for me than like embracing the feminine. So I don't really know. Now you've got me thinking. I'm like, oh.
This is one of the reasons why I wanted to talk with you, because I have all these questions. Like, I mean, some of the other work I do is in massage and body work. Of course, I haven't been practicing since like March, but like, as a massage therapist, I see people come in who have experienced traumas, and those traumas could be anything from, the inhibition of movement because of whatever social more, to the point where they're so far removed from their body they can't even feel it. They cannot feel their bodies, and also dissociating from the pain often too, like not realizing there's pain there,
Right.
until we touch it in a session. They're like, what am I like,
They're like, what the
I carry this a while. And so like I think movement is very, very important. I lost my string of thought there, but I see it all the time. Like, I think there's like some kind of connection with like finding our joy and actually being able to, like you said, decolonize movement, because colonization of anything is a stricture. It's like a heavy boundary that's created for someone else's use, or it's like we might not be using it yet, but we're creating these like stipulations so
yeah.
that we can just step in and swipe it up whenever we're ready, right? um, so
There's like a really strong surveilling presence with colonization.
mhm.
And I don't necessarily know if it's always an external gaze. Much like with internalizing racism, I feel like that internalization of being colonized,
Mhm.
like is something that we don't always consider. We just always think it like, yes, it obviously has to do with race, but I think it goes much deeper than that. And I just like, I feel like, and I'm like talking in super like gross generalization of the BIPOC community, but whether we know it or not, what am I trying to say? I feel like subconsciously every BIPOC person knows that they're being surveilled.
Yeah.
Constantly.
Mm-hmm.
Whether our white counterparts are choosing to vocalize that surveillance or that policing or not, I feel like we're so hyper aware of it that maybe like beginning the process of decolonization or stepping away, or like, beginning the process of stepping away from that is maybe like instill some sort of fear, because like it's uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable to check yourself and be like, oh shit, well there it is.
I think I think you're spot on. I mean, I've definitely experienced that for me. You know, like I, as a mode of survival, and it wasn't something I could quite articulate necessarily, but I started dressing very nondescript, and even in men's clothing, and like very like, you know, like slacks, to even out my curves, clothes that were a little too big, and just like, you know, becoming less and less noticeable in a certain way. Um, I think I dressed way too professionally often for high school, but that's another matter. But I was just trying to find a way to, like, you know, be more and more ambiguous, and that felt safer. You know, people didn't stop me on the street anymore necessarily, not as often, um, and things like that, things that were very uncomfortable, but I wasn't able to voice. And
Right.
then, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you just want to hide.
Mhm.
I mean, that's like, well, that was the idea, right? It's either like you blend in and you make it work,
Mhm.
or you,
Go the other direction.
yeah, like you ostracize yourself and like try to completely remove yourself from even like existing, and which isn't healthy either,
Mhm.
you know? But I don't know. Like as an Asian person, like the way that I feel like the way that East Asian specifically, like South Asian is different, like Middle East Asian, obviously, like, you know, like the conversation of colorism comes up, and like the association of color, like skin color, things like that. But East Asian specifically, like I feel like we just experience things of that nature so differently from our other BIPOC brothers and sisters and
Yeah.
non-binary friends and folks, like because of the association of lighter skin to whiter or whiteness or purity or innocence or whatever you want to associate that with. Like I feel like there's this like false sense of like, hey, you should be comfortable, you're like white enough,
Mhm.
you're okay. But like when you like really get to a place of like actually being able to dive into that, you're like, oh, not really though. Because at the end of the day, like enough, that word enough is just like enough to like get me by so that I'm not harassed.
Right.
But now in this day and age, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter because there are people literally everywhere waiting to get up in your business for no reason.
Yeah. Uh, and that's stressful. Uh,
I can't even begin to imagine. Like,
yeah.
I don't know. I feel like in Colorado with the whole COVID and like, the attack on Asian people, I haven't seen a lot of that here.
Yeah.
In places like California, where a larger part of the population is Asian American or immigrants, like seeing a lot of stuff come up over there, and just, it's crazy right now.
Yeah. And that's frustrating. And it's just like, what? Like a stream of trending news that happened that was not even the truth. Sorry,
Yeah, it's
there's
okay.
a web somewhere over here.
Like
I think it's gone now.
at a spirit or something. What's happening over there?
It's crazy. It's probably just a flash in my glasses. Now that I did all that. Um, I I worked with someone at one of the jobs that I had before COVID hit. Or well, we went back to work. It was at a Starbucks, and a young woman, and some of our customers would come up and say some things in regards to I believe she's Korean as well, and they would say some things about, you know, about her being Korean and also COVID, and it was really uncomfortable, like
Yeah,
really uncomfortable, and to the point too is like, oh, this person with these crazy ideas knows where I work, you know what I mean?
yeah,
Um, and that was very uncomfortable. because it was based on like not even real information, and caused a lot of anxiety for that person. And I just get really sad. I just like kind of shut down with stuff like that, because you know, you always want people to do better, and to use some kind of critical thinking, and also like stop dehumanizing people for multiple different reasons, because like, I mean, because what does it do? It doesn't, I don't think it helps anybody.
I don't think so either. And honestly, like, I wish, I don't know, like the amount of sources that we have from both parties, red and blue, and then people claiming to be unbiased and all of this stuff, like, it's just such an oversaturation of information.
Mm-hmm.
Finding a source that's legitimate, I find to be difficult, because, you know, people who even claim to be unbiased sources still tend to lean one way or the other, at least,
Mm-hmm.
you know. And then you like, on top of that, you have shit that's just complete misinformation being put out into the world for anybody to grab. And we're not in a place right now where people can like look at something and read it and go, well, I wonder if this is true. Maybe I should like go fact check or see if I can find another article that's saying similar things. Like, we just take everything for face value. And, you know, like I do this too. Just take stuff for face value and we run. Literally,
Right.
we get an inch, we take a fucking mile. And I think the lack of ability in the lack of critical thinking ability in the larger majority of humanity is literally what's gonna be our downfall.
Yeah, I mean, it's already happening. We're seeing it. Like, I was thinking just like of like, say, Associated Press. If you worked in journalism or whatever, that's kind of like where the news is supposed to be the most subjective. And we live in a world where the news is coming so quickly, and there are lots of people who know how to work media, not, you know, not even being part of media, but they know how to work it. And so who's pulling the strings at any given time, I feel like. And so it's like, it would be really great if everyone had the gumption to an initiative to, you know, do that extra work, because it's actually what's needed. We need to be able to fact check and you know, find out who the string holders is really, or are who are the stakeholders. And honestly, we're part of that stakeholding group. And it's just like, to take everything for the word is just like, it's very dangerous.
It is.
As we've been seeing.
And like, you can see it with this newer uprising of Black Lives Matter. You know, like, you can see very, very clearly see, just even within your personal clique, who is actually doing that, like, investigation and interrogation on their own.
Yeah.
And the ones that are like, well, help me, what book should I read, blah 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 blah. Like,
the library has a good list going, seriously. Like, ask a librarian, that's what they do.
Literally Google list of anti-racist books, and I guarantee you'll get at least 25 pages of results.
Yeah.
You know? It's just, that's why I feel like we're forever going to be stuck in this cycle until people start waking up and realizing, like, this base level of information is the shit that they want us to know. But until we decide to take the initiative and actually dive deep into that research and get really uncomfortable with ourselves, nothing's gonna shift.
Yeah. So I want to round it back to dance, because I feel like in a lot of ways dance can be more true. I mean, we talked about, like, there is still this problem of colonization on movement, on dance, and expression that way. And I feel like there's like a liminal space there too that you can like kind of creep into without anyone noticing. And language isn't necessarily like that.
Mm-hmm. And sometimes I feel like that's where maybe, you know, like dance always has such a bad rap.
Mm.
I know so many choreographers and performance artists and dance theater artists that are like really making profound statements against what's happening in our world and our culture right now.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, again, the fact that people and like that critical thinking and that thought process is like, I don't want to say underdeveloped, but I'll use it for a lack of a better term right now. Like, is underdeveloped in so many people.
Mm-hmm.
People don't look to dance for that kind of disruption.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like they want to be able to watch it and know that it's a clear storyline, which is why ballet is so popular. You don't have to think. You don't have to do nothing but sit there with your program in your lap and watch people twirl around and like do the shit that they've been doing for like 25 years. And it's amazing.
Yeah.
And ballet is so beautiful.
I agree.
Substantially, you know, like where are we getting with that?
I keep thinking of flash mobs.
Yeah.
Just walking down the street with your Starbucks sippy cup, and then all of a sudden you're like, what is happening right now? And you know.
But it catches people's attention. And I feel like if it's not in people's faces, I feel like people don't want it.
Yeah,
like flashing giant signs, twirling around and doing hip hop. They don't want it. They don't. It's weird.
I don't know what else to say. I'm like, is there anything you'd like to add? Any other places you like to go in this conversation?
I don't know. I don't think so. I feel like we hit a lot of good places. Like we strayed away from the dance for a while, but that's okay. I feel like it needed to happen. But well, good, yeah.
Well, what are some ways folks can like keep tabs on your work and also support your work?
Yeah, if people want to follow my Instagram, it's at Vivian Kim Dance with an underscore. I post a lot of my work there. Mm-hmm. And you can follow me on Facebook, just Vivian Kim. Though there are many, many Asian women named Vivian Kim. Like I don't know why, but it's a very popular name amongst Asian women for some reason. But yeah, just try to narrow the search down to Colorado, I guess, and see what happens. But I'll pop up, you know, like I'm friends with you on Facebook, so that'll be an easy way to find me. But yeah, those are the two places where I'm posting the most about my work right now.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Right on.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for this chat. I know I definitely learned some things. I'm really grateful for, you know, like I said, that script flip, because I've definitely entered a negative headspace about like just existing in the world. And it's a spark enough to be like, yeah, I can go forward now and just like do what I need to do with that flip, right? It's a new understanding. And then just like also like thinking about ways movement can actually make us better, and the importance of movement, the importance of supporting dance, because I mean, technically you're kind of a scientist of movement, really. Like you know, you all are doing the experimenting and the pushing and all those things that can help inform the rest of us if we're willing to watch and show up for those things.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like I'm taking a lot away from this as well.
Cool.
a lot of different questions are coming up for me. That'll be good to like kind of sit with for a little bit and just think about.
Well, if you ever want to do a part 2, let me know. It
Yeah.
looks like these will be happening for a while. So.
Yeah. Awesome.
All right. Well, I'm going to go ahead and close this up.